I am Laura Jackson. I'm the music director of the Reno Philharmonic Orchestra in Reno, Nevada. And I am very, very pleased to be here with three of my most distinguished colleagues who are all brilliant conductors. Each of these conductors here with me has an orchestra or one or two or three, of which they are music director, but they also have conducted globally. So to this discussion, we bring the ability to discuss making programs work in specific communities, but then also programming for the largest orchestras of the world and maybe how that is different. So Andy Graham is here. He is the music director in Elgin, Illinois. You've been there since 2013, yes?
Yes, if the math is correct.
If the math is correct. I know, Andy, we were fellow soldiers as fellows of the League of American Orchestras and their partnership with Cleveland Orchestra for Andy and Atlanta for me, and we are grateful to still be employed, yes?
Yes.
It's all good, it's all good. Very good. And Michael is one of my gurus, Michael Morgan here. He was my teacher and mentor at Tanglewood. And I still have your voice in my brain telling me things to do and not to do.
Sorry about that.
All good advice. Michael is the music director in Oakland, in California, has been there for many years. Also Sacramento Philharmonic, no longer, but was there, did many great things there, and with various other orchestras of all types. Very interesting programming there. And then Carlos Prieto, who I had a wonderful conversation with yesterday and who I am so delighted to meet. He is with the Louisiana Philharmonic. He's been there for 11 years, yes? Mm-hmm. And then you have two orchestras in Mexico as well, yes? Mm-hmm. National Orchestra of Mexico. Yeah. And Mineria. Yeah. Okay. All right. And as I said, so Carlos, you're coming from a concert in with Hamburg, doing all of Hinestera, doing interesting things and so forth. Where I would like to start this discussion of programming is, what elements do each of you think make up a great program and a great season? We are all dealing with a complex recipe when we put together one program. What is it that we're trying to do? What are the questions that we're trying to answer, the problems that we're trying to solve by putting programs together for people on stage? You want to start, Andy?
Oh boy. Well, programming for me, whether it's programming a single performance or an entire season, is the time, it is a time that I hate. Because hopefully I'm starting from the standpoint of, okay, you're going to work with X orchestra, maybe it'll be at this time of year. What would you like to do? What do I think is going to work well with that orchestra? How do I think that I can pick repertoire that both they and I are going to be able to effectively sell to the public through our performance of it? So getting just to choose a particular piece to base a program on is something that I procrastinate again and again and again until usually I get an email saying, we need to know by X date, and then I'm forced to actually choose something. And then after choosing a main piece, insert X symphony here, or we're going to work with Y soloist, and that person would really like to do one of these concertos. What sorts of things can we come up with? That always feels very painful to me. Programming a season is a level of torment that every time it comes up in the year.
It's very weighty, isn't it?
It's very weighty, and there are all of the things that I want to do with my orchestra, and those are the factors that have to be weighed.
Which are?
Well, they can be, all right, can I afford to do it that year? Yeah. If I can afford to do this very, very large piece, what am I going to shave off and do somewhere else? When am I going to do it on that year? If I want to work with a particular soloist on a particular project, when is that person available? You know, all of these things that they never tell you in conductor school that you would have to consider. And so when it comes to programming lesser known works, that tends to, for me, come more towards the very end of, okay, I've factored in, can I sell that? Can the orchestra play it well? Is it going to be good for our long-term development in the relationship between the orchestra and myself? Is it going to fit in the multi-year journey that the public and I have taken together? And when I say that, I mean, if we've done a few Shostakovich symphonies over the years, and we're going to do a Shostakovich symphony like 14, am I going to be able to relate that to the stuff that they've experienced in prior seasons so that they stick with me on that long journey? After weighing all of those factors, then getting to the point of being able to say, okay, here's this really, really cool unknown piece that I'd like to do. Where can that go?
Okay.
And then finding a spot for it.
Yeah.
It stinks.
It's a complex issue for sure. Michael, would you say that?
My programming is usually taking a season or even a concert and thinking that somewhere along the way through the entire season, everybody should at some point be happy. And so you have a lot of different constituencies you have to get in, and you do have to do things about soloists and pieces you want to do and pieces that are less well known. You have to balance the program. Can you afford it? Can you balance something you really want to do against something that draws the crowds? You know, you put all of those factors in, and then in the case of Oakland, is an extremely diverse population. So we are always thinking. My main question always is, who is not here? When I look around the hall at a concert, who is not here, and what can I do to get them here? And that also impacts my programming, and that also then sends you off with a lot of actually new and sometimes radical ideas about what to try, and to bring your audience along when you try it. So that when you put the whole season together, it has it just goes all over every possible road, and I make it very clear to my audience, and that's a rule always at Oakland Symphony, is that no one is going to like everything that we do. The only person that has to like everything is me, and if I'm not conducting, even I don't have to like everything. So that's the idea. Is there are lots of different constituencies. Can you get them all so that everyone is happy at some point along the way, and that people adjust also to the notion that if I do a piece here that this person thinks is like the greatest thing in the world, 3 seats away there's someone who thinks that they are just being tortured. And then the other way goes around, you do another piece, this person now is happy, that one's not, but you have to train both of them to know that each of their tastes matter, and so they all have to be covered in the course of the year. And it's okay for you to come up to me and say, I did not like that piece, and I can go, that's fine, I didn't write it.
So Carlos, how about for you?
This is a tough question because I could answer to you in theory what I would like that experience to be, and then the practice is not exactly, as we all face it, always ideal in that sense. Our theory is always more ideal than practice. And I agree with both of my colleagues, with all of you, about what you've said, but I actually, for me, it's a very fun process. And it's more, yes, there is a little bit of the torment and that you have to do it or you have to finish by a certain date. But for me, that's when I learn the most. And I always try to tell a story. And kind of doesn't matter what the story is, as long as it motivates me to dig in deeper. So I do a lot of programs that seemingly have absolutely no connection, but have an inner connection that only is logical initially to me, okay? And because there are so many gimmicky connections around here that I try to avoid the normal, obvious connections and try to delve deeper. So like one of the programs that I do quite often is I pair American and Mexican composers who, I'm from Mexico, so who were very productive and friends. So those two are Copland and Chavez, okay? So Copland and Chavez, who were very different people, but who were incredibly counterproductive, and they were like always mixing. And few people know this, but Copland wrote part of Appalachian Spring in Tepoztlan, Morelos, which is almost offensive to say, you know, it's like this, the most American piece was written in one of the most deeply Mexican places. And Chavez premiered his piano concerto in New York with the Philharmonic. So I always try to do those crossings, and then the third work somehow related to something that relates to them. So for example, Shostakovich Symphony. Why? Because Shostakovich and his kind of realism was talking about things that Chavez was talking about, or that music and arts relate to in Mexico, which is portraying the reality of society in Mexico. So for me, those kind of programs allow me to do something which is musical yet also extra musical. Of course, one thing which I don't need to say and everyone will agree with is that finally the quality of the music is paramount. And that no matter what you put out there, if it's good, it's going to work. And if you believe that you believe it's going to work, it's going to work. And I used to be apologetic about pieces, and I would come out and say, oh, you must listen to this very carefully because this is such a great piece of music. I've abandoned doing that. I either just tell them something about the piece if needed, or nothing, and just trust the piece on its own. And I have learned that the audience is, first, much more sophisticated than most people think, especially in management. And I don't mean to, you know, to be negative about anything like that, but the audience is actually very knowledgeable and very sensitive. And when something is good and something is presented in a way that has a combination of depth and quality, it comes along well, even if it makes people angry. You know, so some of these composers wrote music so that the experience as an audience member would be very ungratifying, okay? And, you know, like Michael said, nothing wrong with that. So I try to tell a story, and for me, it's like three different things. When I program in Mexico, I go crazy, okay? Because I can do anything I want. And I kind of am blessed with a captive audience and with a situation where I don't need to sell tickets to make ends meet.
Yes, so back up there and just dwell on that for one moment.
Yes.
When you say you can do whatever you want and you have a captive audience, are you speaking about the fact that the structure is different, that you do not have to work to get butts in seats, sell tickets?
And I know that's an unfair situation, but that's the situation that's there, okay? So that situation happens to me in three places. With English and German radio orchestras, okay, where suddenly they call you because you like Raul Tavara, and they say, can you do a whole program of Raul Tavara? And I say, when, where, and there I am, okay? Because those are the learning weeks, even if you do it in a radio station with like 45 people. It's a deeply gratifying experience. The other one is, in general, some places around Latin America, I would say Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires, maybe Bogota and Mexico City, where you can program, and some areas in Mexico also, Jalapa would be one place, where you have an audience that will be there kind of no matter what. And then also German orchestras always like this kind of thing. Like this thing about Hamburg that you were saying was an Elbphilharmonie, an homage to Ginastera. Well, that's like my Christmas gift, okay?
Yeah.
So, and then the other part of the experience is when you were a guest. And then when you're a guest, you're giving these lines, in a way, restrictions that you have to work against or for, or make it possible, okay? So I know that if an orchestra is going to call me, I know the list of pieces that they have done in the last 2 years. Not because I look, because if I ask, oh, have you done pictures? No, forget about it, we did it last season. So I go into the rep that I know that they haven't done, okay? So like if I, first Brahms I suggest is Brahms 3. And normally they take it.
Because nobody else dares to do it. Yes.
Okay, so
And it's the
that's
best
the
one.
second way.
course.
And
the
the third
hardest
one is in New Orleans with my home orchestra. And that's a whole different set of rules because it's a collaborative process. And that's a different animal all in itself. So I compartmentalize, and when I'm a guest, I try to work with the orchestra. But really where I'm very motivated is with my orchestra in Minería in Mexico. It's a fantastic orchestra. It's a nine-week program in the summer, also semi-captive audience. And I learn so much. And sometimes I learn these pieces that I propose in New Orleans, and I said, listen, you've never done this piece, but it's absolutely sensational. Because I'm a firm believer in presenting as varied a repertoire as possible, which doesn't mean all new. It means as much Bach as music that's written now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, you know, we would all agree, based on what you're saying, that that programming is complex. There are lots of different things involved. It's different for different orchestras. I'm curious if you can speak to being a music director. We're getting to the issue of why symphonic stages in the United States, in particular, do not feature composers of color, the works by composers of color, more than they do. I mean, currently it's like 1%. But I think that there's no question that each of you, where you are a music director, you're doing things that are very, very different from each other, and you're doing things that are highly successful. And so before we get specifically to, you know, how we diversify programming, you know, in cases where we haven't, what are you doing in your communities where you're a music director that has worked really well?
You want to go for it?
Yeah, actually, you go first because I think you've got a very, very special circumstance.
All right. Oakland is an extremely diverse population. We're also, politically speaking, we are the center left, the far left, the absolutely insane left. I mean, we go from center left to way over there. Even our Republicans would be, you know, they'd be, you know, like conservative Democrats anywhere else. So anyway, so we have this community that wants to be brought together. And so a few years ago, it's over a decade now, we started doing a series of concerts I call Notes From. And that is, every year we do notes from a different community, different region. We've done notes from China, notes from India, notes from the Middle East, notes from Native America. Next week, I do notes from LGBTQ America. Next year, I do notes from the African diaspora. Most of those concerts we do are half the program is, or part of the program is standard repertoire because I've got all these new people in the room, and so I want them to see what an orchestra normally does. And then half the program is wherever the notes come from. But in some cases, like notes from LGBTQ America, it's all LGBTQ, and we have to, when we cover all the letters, by the way, we cover all of them.
It's a long concert.
Yes, all of them. But when we did notes from Mexico, there was so much repertory that I didn't even do a standard piece on that program because there was so much repertory and it was so varied. And one of the central things we did was the Chavez Piano Concerto, which I loved doing. Llewellyn Sanchez Werner, who's currently a student at Juilliard, or just finishing up at Juilliard, he's, Llewellyn Sanchez Werner, as you can see, he's the whole United Nations in a single person. So he is, his mother is Mexican, and so it was my excuse to get him on the program. But he actually said, let's do the Chavez, and he learned it for the occasion. So I
One of the hardest piano concertos in the literature.
Oh my God, it is really, it is a mid-century modern. But in any case, it was, but we do one of those every year, and then we try to keep some of those people in our audience so that our audience gets more diverse as we go along.
So there is no programming anywhere in the U.S. that I have ever seen that looks anything like what you do there, and I'm full of admiration. But I'm curious how you've gotten there. How much of that is because you were responding to the community in which you work, and how much of it is that you have brought them to this place with their orchestra? In other words, you have led them to love this, or you are responding to their demand for it.
I have led them to like me. And so
This is actually important.
Yes,
This is
so
really
they will
you
come
brought them to
along.
your house.
They will come along, and I will tell them, please, I'm going to share these things with you. And like I say, I will tell you, you will not like all of them, but they're all things that I love, and so they will come along with me. And so we get, because Oakland Symphony was, the old orchestra went bankrupt, it went under. I came and was the beginning of when it restarted, and I've been there ever since, which was since, the Garfield administration. I've been in Oakland. So when I came there, I told them we were going to be, first of all, an education orchestra, because the city, we need to be in the schools, we need to be doing all that, but also there would be a living composer on almost every concert. And all these things were because if you like me and you want me to hang around, we're going to have to do these things. And so even the grumblers have come along, and but they've also seen that my tastes in contemporary music, a lot of the things that they don't want to hear are also annoying to me, and so we don't play those things. And then there's something, and so I can present all these things, and then there's of course. I will play almost anything, but I have a standing rule because I ask people what they want to hear, and so I program what people want to hear. And I always tell them, we can do almost anything if you want to hear, and I'm sorry for any of you who love this guy, if any of you want to hear a note of Hindemith, you have to go somewhere else.
Okay. All right.
You're going to have to go across the bridge.
You're going to go across the bridge or somewhere else, or I'm not going to be there, but that's the rule.
So what I'm hearing is that you've developed a relationship with your
the
audience and
I
trust.
I turn around before concerts, either like when we did Shostakovich 8th recently, and I give them the travelogue through the piece before we play it. And I also didn't do Shostakovich 8th until recently because you need to be old to do Shostakovich 8th. So I didn't do it for a long time. But I do talk them through it before I do the piece. And sometimes I turn around, like I just did a concert 2 weeks ago, with, I don't know if any of you know who Kamau Bell is from CNN. Kamau Bell does all the programs on race on CNN as a stand-up comedian. But I had this idea that various foundations have now supported, where I turn the orchestra over to a great thinker. That is, I asked Kamau Bell, what do you want us to play? And I didn't choose a note of music on the program. It had everything from Nina Simone to Tears for Fears to Flight of the Bumblebee and Saber Dance. They were all on the same program. And he sat in this throne, basically, at stage left, and got up and told us why each piece was meaningful to him. And he really was engaged in the program and incredibly funny, sold out the place, and we had all these people who we never see at symphony concerts ever come to this concert. So those are the exciting nights to me, and I like doing the Shostakovich and Mahler and stuff too. But
I am totally going to rip that off.
So Andy, let's go to you next, because you're doing really powerful things in Elgin, and you were just telling me the other day about a really traditional program you did with Dvorak 6 that was packed.
Yeah.
And people loved it. So what's going on there?
It's everything that Michael's talking about. It's, I've been there. This is my 5th season in this it is not diverse. We do have center left, center right, very far left, very far right. But it is I find a very, very quintessential Midwestern community that is very, very strong. It's very supportive. But I have purposefully done just that, which is to try and become part of the community so that I can earn the public's trust that when I program something that I'm going to put on the stage for you, it's something that I hope that you will like. It is something that I think is cool. And if you like me, then hopefully you'll like this. But if you don't, that is okay.
Right.
I'm always telling people, tell me what you do like, tell me what you don't like, and it's perfectly fine to not like something that we've programmed, that you've heard. All I would ask is, if you and I are together, can we just talk about it? Can we talk about why? What about it do you think? And I can tell you why I think it's cool. And so over the course of the seasons that I've been there, in regards to programming decisions, when I started, it was very, very, fundamental. It was core canon repertoire. I remember you know, at some function after I had become music director, somebody came up and said, "We're not going to listen to all Henza now, are we?" No, don't worry, I'm not a big Henza fan. But I did say, but over the course of my time here, I will bring you along with me to at least understand and admire the basic works of Schoenberg. And they were like, challenge accepted. So speaking before concerts, explaining how things connect, how all of this music connects. People are really want to know, and they want to come along for the ride on that. And so the standard stuff is the standard stuff. It's great to do. The less standard stuff, even if it's by standard composers, like, you know, doing a Dvorak's Sixth Symphony rather than 7, 8, or 9. Being able to program that and show people how that connects to the works of Brahms, and people understanding what you're talking about when you're going through, is going to help pave the way for the more adventurous stuff that I would like to do going down the road in future seasons. And then hopefully that, along with my learning more and more about repertoire, can actually start to address the problem that we're talking about today, which is more programming by our people.
Yeah, people of color. So, and Carlos, for you, you have brought New Orleans out of the ashes, yes? Or out of
No,
not
actually,
the
I
ashes.
think New Orleans has brought me into something that I wasn't, which is, I mean, if anyone here knows New Orleans, it's absolutely impossible to be the same person if you, as before you knew New Orleans. So New Orleans is one of the most vibrant, culturally interesting, and also musically diverse places. I mean, it's a place where I've heard bands play Latin jazz better than in many places in Latin America. So I think one of the biggest challenge, probably should say the biggest challenge, and one that I wish I knew how to solve. I'm getting ideas here, but is the fact that New Orleans has a certain constituency that is just not present in our concerts. Okay, so in other words, when I look out to the audience, it's a typically white and older crowd. When I look out in my concerts in Mexico, it's a very young crowd, which is something just good. But we haven't figured out, and I think we're still looking, and any ideas are welcome, how to include segments of the population which don't come to our concerts. And so the way I do it, or the way I try to do it, is I try to immerse myself in those segments. For example, I mean, along with a good friend in New Orleans, we created a group called the New Orleans Black Chorale, Dr. John Ware, and it's part of a chorus from Xavier University, along with people from different churches. And I brought them to Mexico to do Tremonisha by Scott Joplin. I also brought them to Mexico to do, of course, Gershwin, Porgy and Bess, and spirituals. And they brought 3 encores, and in Mexico City, they needed about 4 more. That's how deep the experience were. And so they became celebrity. They had already gone twice to Mexico before I was even presenting them in New Orleans, okay? And when they sang in New Orleans, I have to say, disappointed that our audience kind of didn't change. It was still the same audience. While I was imagining that we would attract, you know, an audience that we don't attract, and maybe it was marketing, maybe it was the way we sold the concert or something like that, but it didn't achieve what I wanted. So I'm still seeking, but I cannot take the explanation that's given to me ever since I come to this country, that the audience is white because they get classical music from their family and they're European immigrants and all that. Well, yes, but I mean, what we do is so incredible. And I mean, this week is, for me, just an eye-opening experience of why isn't what I'm seeing this week what I see in the concert hall if I go to a concert of a major symphony orchestra. So this, to me, is the unanswered question, okay? That we should all try to answer somehow, because that's our future and that's the future of classical music. So for me, the most motivating thing is to see young people, no matter what their color, creed, religion, whatever, playing music. And I fail to understand why our audiences don't become naturally more diverse as the societies that they form are more diverse. So Michael has some great ideas, and I'm sure he does some amazing things that I would like to learn how to do it in New Orleans, okay? And I have to tell you that in Mexico, it's not that it's easier, it's already there partially. So we already attract a young audience. But why? Because tickets, I mean, tickets in New Orleans are $20, $30, $40, $50, $60. Tickets in Mexico City are $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $10, okay? And anyone who can produce any kind of ID gets a discount. Okay?
Oh, come on.
You have a piece of paper.
All right.
You get
And I have some friends who have never, ever paid for a concert ticket in Mexico. And I know them by name, and and I know that they're there and they gotta come, okay? So maybe one way to do it would be, and this, when I was working with Houston Symphony, we instituted a free concert for the Mexican or the Latin American community. Free concert. Somebody paid for that concert. So is that the way? Is it the way to give out tickets or give out an invitation? Not so sure about that. So all of these questions I raise because to me they're unanswered, and it's like the holy grail in the United States. If I do a concert in Brazil, forget it. That's diverse, that's everything just by nature of being in Recife, Curitiba, all these places. The audience is diverse and it's all racist. New Orleans, which is perhaps 70% black, I think, or something like that, we have maybe 5% in the
concert hall.
So it's a question mark for you to solve.
And we are starting to get lots and lots of questions that I want to go to as soon as we can. But the last question that I would like to put out to you, sort of following on that, is it useful to diversify programming in order to diversify an audience? Does one lead to the other? Which one comes first? How are those two related? Is this our aim? Or is it something else?
I think the main thing is to be welcoming. And yes, a diverse program, yes, if people see you're doing a diverse program, they see that you're interested in what various people, have various experiences people have had, but it's not one thing or the other, or one thing leads to the other. It's making sure that you have a reputation for being welcoming of everybody. And once you do that, people start actually giving you a chance. We did a concert of the Dvorak New World Symphony, because it had been part of an audience vote to hear the Dvorak New World Symphony. Well, before the Dvorak New World Symphony, we talked about immigration. And before the concert started, I welcomed everyone. I said, whether your family came here with papers, without papers, or involuntarily, you are welcome at the Oakland Symphony. And the place just erupted because everybody, you make sure everyone knows that everybody is aggressively welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not programming. I think that programming a diverse program is not going to address that main issue, which is that a lot of people still think that going to symphony is not for them. And you have to provide them with a comfortable environment in which to just experience what it is that we're trying to give to the community. Last week in Elgin is part of a big thing that had to do with back rent to the city. We don't own our hall. Part of our agreement for the forgiveness of this loan was to open up 2 of our rehearsals for the remainder of this season to anybody in the city. And so we chose last week's program, which was an all John Williams, Steven Spielberg movie
Good.
program. You know,
Yeah.
if you're going to do that for the first time, you want something that people are going to recognize and want to come to. And so all we asked is that you registered on the website, and we limited it to 500 people, and then that quickly happened out. So then we went up to 750, and we had a whole slew of people that had never, ever come to the Elgin Symphony, and they heard an open rehearsal. And I had like a little wireless thing so I could talk, they could hear me work with the orchestra, and I would ask them questions, and a lot of young kids, but they were there for as long as they could be, and then the families would leave when they needed to, and a lot of people stuck around, and we now have reached this group of our community that lives with us, that hopefully have felt that, you know what, maybe this is for me,
Yeah.
and I just didn't know it.
Right, very good. All right, we are going to open up the floor for questions. I'm going to read a couple that I have here. Please feel free to head toward a microphone if you would prefer to do it that way. Let me put this out first. Being that most seasons and programs get chosen, sometimes a year in advance, how to pick programming that is relevant when the social landscape changes daily? Good one. So, is there a way that our programming can respond to our communities and to our, you know?
I change programs all the time.
Okay.
You lucky
And
man.
You make your staff crazy.
I know this is cheating, okay? But when I started doing these programs that I call across the border, and I don't want to get political here because I get a little bit, aggressive when I get political. But I really think that when Mexico started being portrayed as what it isn't, I said, okay, now it's my time to include as much Mexican music as I can, but not what people want, what people ask me. I don't need to play Huapango again, okay? So I started kind of aggressively promoting pieces, and I started begging American composers to write for orchestras in Mexico and Mexican composers to write for orchestras in the US. So within less than a year, I had Gaby Ortiz write a piece that was premiered by Juilliard Orchestra, and now was premiered in Liverpool in England, and it made a big impact, and it's a great piece. I had an American composer write a piece for Mexico. All of these pieces were added to the season after. Give you an example. Louisiana Philharmonic is in 3 weeks going to Carnegie Hall. The program is Philip Glass and Revueltas, okay? And so I said, okay, we need somebody to give an added thing. So I asked Gaby Ortiz to write an encore for me, which is called Anthropolis, okay? So that's a new thing. So I think really, I'm sorry, maybe I'm wrong, but that we fear so much to change a program, to add an encore, there are all these set of rules that we put to ourselves that were non-existent in the time of Haydn. I mean, when Haydn was premiering his symphonies, when the Clock Symphony, people clapped so much after the slow movement that he repeated that movement before he went to the next movement. Yet today, if an audience member claps, somebody in the audience is going to go like, shh, I want to kill that person. Okay?
Not in Elgin. They don't do that in Elgin.
Okay, well, the thing is that why do we make something as vibrant and as alive as we do so solid and so non-changing? In other words, I'm not going to change the Dvorak New World that everyone buys tickets for. But I may ask the soloist to do another piece with the orchestra, or do an encore, or change the overture. Sometimes, we don't need to do Prometheus Overture by Beethoven if there's the chance to premiere a piece that's exactly relevant to the things that are happening. So I'm very flexible with that. Management of orchestras hate this, okay? But I've made German orchestras change programs from 1 week to the next. Incredibly proud of that. Okay,
And you get
why is
invited
it? Because
back.
in Latin America, we actually choose the programs 3 months before.
Wow.
So I don't care. So maybe the programming.
Michael, how about you? Do you change programs to respond
No,
to?
well, not much. We have been very lucky because we happened to do Notes from Native America the year we were having the big pipeline dispute up there, and we filled the place with Native Americans who were, it was their time. Or this year doing Notes from LGBTQ America when we're also under siege at the moment. So we just happen to be, or we talk about we talk about whatever social issues are suggested by whatever music we are playing. We did the Rossini Stabat Mater recently, and we talked about people who lost children to gun violence. So we take the social issue and we talk about things that relate to the music we're doing now. At some point in this discussion, we must talk about artistic administrators and what they have done to the programming of music and how they are the bane of most people's existence. But, okay.
Go for it. I mean,
No, because that is an issue. If you want to get more of this more unusual music programs, you have to educate both conductors and artistic administrators. Now, there are some, I don't mean to say all artistic administrators are bad. There are some very good ones out there, not enough to form a basketball team, but still, there are some very good ones out there. But you have to get the pieces actually in front of those people. And the other thing is for conductors, because we all control a lot of what we play, when you know composers and composers of color that you want to, that you want to get in front of conductors, it's really important to look at what the conductors already program and try to find composers that actually fit into what they do. There are black composers, and I won't name names here either, but there are black composers who I think very highly of as people, but I don't like the music, so I don't play those people. But then there are other black composers who I just love everything about their music, and so and you can look at how I program, and you can see who fits and who would not fit into what I'm doing. So take pieces you see would fit into what the conductor is doing or what the artistic administrator is programming. And the artistic administrators, the problem is they don't know enough music is the problem. And the only way they learn music is by listening to a recording. And so if there's not a good recording of the piece, then you can't take the score to them and show them how this is a really great piece because they...
End rant here.
Okay, let's take one of the questions we have here.
Hello, maestros. Good afternoon. My name is Angelica Durrell. I am a social entrepreneur currently living in Stamford, Connecticut. My organization was founded in 2011 specifically to address the issue that classical music per se was not relevant, accessible, and inclusive. And the way we've been able to have a full house, revenue from ticket sales, 2 to 90-year-olds, audience members, artistic and access to soloists has been by incorporating the cultures of the current that reflect the demographics. But now, as we are trying to scale it, and part of the reason why we're here working with Sphinx is how can we pitch and present, or what would you need to have as artistic directors of these major symphonies in order to consider doing a collaboration with us, per se, or with organizations that are doing this and showing the audience numbers?
Who wants to take?
You want to take, because I think the first thing you have to do is you have to find, it just, everything won't work for everybody. And so the first thing you have to do is you have to look at the life work of various conductors and see, are they collaborative people? Because some of them are collaborative and some of them think they know everything already. So you have to find the conductors who are open and who want to actually work with other organizations. And that might be your hometown orchestra, but it might be the orchestra, a couple towns over. But you have to look at what they do, and you can tell when people are collaborative and when they aren't. And if they are just programming, very much the canon, overture, concerto, symphony type program, then chances are they're not going to. You need to look elsewhere. So you need to pick your battles.
I would say that you also need to get in front of these people. As conductors, we get composer submissions, soloist recording submissions, people asking for auditions, and there's just not enough time to go through the stacks that I get when I'm struggling to get through the stacks of just the stuff that I need to prepare. So it's great that you're here at an event like this so that you know, perhaps you and I can talk later. I'll be at the bar. You know, but you spend time trying to get in front of these people so that you can at least make a human type pitch so that I know a little bit more about what it is that you or your organization or other like-minded organizations would like to do and what it is that they can do. And then maybe somebody like myself could help that. And sometimes maybe not even in directing it myself, but maybe I'd be like, you know what, I know exactly the person that you're looking for, go here. The music business in the world is very, very small, and if we all learn more about each other, whether we are a performer, a composer, an administrator, a community organizer, social entrepreneur, if we all get to know each other better, we can keep all of those connections and make further connections as time progresses.
And I would just add that I think most orchestras in this day and age, especially smaller orchestras, really see the value of collaborations. It's just good business sense, frankly. You know, I mean, the more people you involve in what you're doing, the more you broaden the artistic and just the audience members that are interested, the constituencies that are interested in what you're doing, the more people you're going to have buying tickets to your concert. So I think there might be ways in which the language you use when you are appealing speaks to some of that. Okay, let's jump over here.
Hello. Quick shout out to Maestro Michael for conducting Gateways. I really enjoyed that last summer. A couple questions. One quick one for Maestro Carlos. I was wondering about how, if Mexico has a Ministry of Culture and how that affects the sales of tickets and the cost of tickets at, you know, those venues. And also I'm wondering a general question, in everyone's experience on stage, how does how diverse are the concerts at your concert halls, and do you think that affects the audience turnout of, you know, just what the audience looks like for your classical concerts as opposed to who comes to other concerts that are featured at your halls?
Okay, so I think that one of the problems that we deal with in classical music is 3 wrong perceptions. 3, and they are, at least that's how I see it. The perception of cultural elitism. I need to know in order to appreciate. So I always say, well, did you like Star Wars? Do you know what camera made Star Wars? No, you just watch and you like. The other one is a social elitism, or the idea that this is not for me, this is for that kind of people, and therefore that's a big one. And the other one is financial, the perception that concerts are very expensive. So in every organization that I am a part, I make a point of battling those wrong perceptions. Now, in the US, it is harder to tackle those wrong perceptions because tickets are expensive, very expensive, okay? So to answer your question, of course, in Mexico, there is a Ministry of Culture, and we give them, I get more done in Mexico in a breakfast meeting with a politician than I do in a year of fundraising in New Orleans, okay? And why is it? Because that's just the nature of the situation. And I still, and I know that this is something that is not right, but I don't understand why the governments don't fund orchestras. To me, it's sinful, because I think orchestras represent some of the best things that a community can give. So the reason why I am blessed with some of these situations in Mexico is because of governmental support. And the government is not shy of saying we're going to support a symphony orchestra because it's a very important institution. So we are able to do tickets that are $2, $3 for young people, but U.S. orchestras do this. But these perceptions, or the tackling of these perceptions, are the reason why our audience in Mexico City, especially in Bellas Artes, is more diverse. It's not every orchestra in Mexico, not every hall. But when you have the most expensive tickets in the hall being $80, $90, and they are going to attract people who can afford that, it's very problematic to send the message of inclusion. So I'm very interested in what some orchestras have done with lowering the prices of tickets or any things like that, because I mean that's a very interesting topic for me. How to get people who cannot pay for concerts to come to concerts, yet still get people who can pay for concerts go and pay for concerts.
Unfortunately, we're getting really close to the end. I'd love to take this question here.
Hello, my name is Raylan, and I'm a budding conducting student at a small liberal arts college in Western Massachusetts. And my question for you all is, what advice would you give to student orchestras and academic institutions who usually get caught up in programming the Western canon to start introducing a diverse program?
I just wanted to start off by saying there are a couple of resources that are just newly being made available. So Rachel Barton-Pine has been here. She has developed the Orchestral Music by Black Composers, OMBC. This is a resource that's about to be published. And right now, my understanding is it is a resource for individual instrumental study, but there is a wing of this that is going to be developed that is specifically orchestral. And then the last resource that I'll mention is the LatinOrchestralMusic.com. This is the conductor Miguel Harth-Bedoya. He has developed a wonderful resource of over 9,000 pieces for orchestras that are, Latin American composers. So I would encourage everybody to begin using that.
I have the handout of the Orchestral Music by Black Composers. I'll be at the door if people want to get it on the
Terrific.
There you go.
That is wonderful. Well,
I really wanted to get
there are so many great questions here that it's just killing me that we don't have time to get to. I'm going to just put a question out here that I want us all to go away thinking about. When composers of color are programmed, they're often ghettoized, Black History Month concerts. How do you address the economic incentive of such marketing? It's a great.
Yeah, we don't do black. At Oakland Symphony, every month is Black History Month.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
We-
A huge thank you to our panelists, and thank you for coming.
Well,